Good morning, students. Today in this class, we will be talking about narrator modes of thinking. In the last class, we stopped with different narrative techniques starting from ancient period to the present. We talked about all those ancient narrative techniques propounded by Plato, Aristotle, and then we looked into the voices of Middle Ages. Then we talked about the rise of novel in the 18th century. And coming to the present, we talked about the experimentations happening in literature, basically in novel, in narration. So, in 1970s, what you see is that novelists started experimenting with new ways of representing reality. And in early periods, we had this realist novels, which described, as the name indicates, it described the world of its characters with great clarity. There is this realism in front of you. And the novel was so real that these readers are asked to believe in it. And there was at no point it never revealed that it was only a fictional world. And here we had a set of writers, an interesting group of writers who started experimenting with realist novels as well. We had writers like Graham Swift, John Barth, Martin Amis. They did something interesting. What they did was they gave us the world of characters, that is the novel, but on the other hand, they also revealed this act of writing this novel. So basically, they did two things. That is, they described the novel as though it was real. They described the novel and its characters as though it was real. But at the same time, they made it clear that this world of the novel is still a fiction. And then came all those postmodern novels. You actually had a taste of what is a postmodern novel or a short story. You studied a short story titled A Postmodern Story of Jyoti Vishwanath by Chandramali in 20th century Malayalam literature. So that gave you an idea about what is a postmodern novel or a postmodern story. So, postmodern novel is where the author offers us the world of the novel as though it is real. He presents us the world as real, but at the same time, he starts questioning this world. He starts challenging this world. So, this postmodern novel represents the world, but the author keeps on telling that we need to pay attention to the very act of representation, that this is a fictional world. You see that in that story too, where the author says that this is a fiction and the reader has the full freedom to edit or change or delete. So the author keeps on questioning and takes our attention to this very act of representation. This is known as self-reflexivity. The novel looking into itself, storytelling looking into itself. And the perfect example of this is Italo Calvino's If on a Winter's Night a Traveler. That is a work you have to study in your PG classes. it is a postmodern novel. So this novel opens with a chapter where you find a reader who is trying to find out a comfortable place to read this particular novel if on a winter's night a traveler. So the reader in the first chapter of this work, If on a Winter's Night a Traveler, is going to read this work, If on a Winter's Night a Traveler. And there we see the reader meditating upon how to read a novel, what is a novel, and so on. So here we see that the author is taking our attention to this very act of novel writing and novel reading. And later, this whole novel gets more complicated. At the end of this first chapter, the reader understands that the book which he is reading is not actually If on a Winter's Night a Traveler. He actually got a faulty book from bookstore. So he goes to the bookstore and he asks for this book and he gets another one and it goes on. He gets another 10 books when he goes in search for this If on a Winter's Night a Travel. So it becomes totally complicated. And even the chapters is arranged in a peculiar manner. Chapters with odd numbers are narrated in second person and the second person tell the reader what he is doing in preparation for reading this next chapter. And all these even numbered chapters is the opening of a different novel. As I said earlier, the reader is in search of the real book and he comes across 10 different other novels. So even numbered chapters begins with these different novels. So this is actually a game Italo Calvino plays which puzzles us. Sometimes we get so frustrated, we are so disappointed as a reader. So that is his point. He is trying to make out this point clear that literature can be used to reflect on the practice of producing literature itself. So basically this novel is about how to write a novel and also how to read a novel. So we reached postmodern novels. In this class, we will be talking about different narrative modes of thinking. We have an analysis of all those evolution of different types of narratives. And now in this particular class, we will be talking about narrative modes. So there is this question like how does the human beings think and imagine? This process of thinking in human beings has always been a case of interest for all those scientists, philosophers, psychologists. This question, like how does human beings think and imagine? And there is this cultural science psychologist, Jerome Werner, who talks about two main modes of thinking. We think in these two main modes. One is logico-scientific and the other one is narrative mode. And as the name indicates, in the logico-scientific mode, we look for if-then or cause and effect sequence, as in if X happens, then Y follows. Y is the result of X. And we have narrative mode. It would just read like this, X and then Y. And it will leave us, the readers, to consider the causal connection between the two. We, as the readers, have the freedom to connect between these two. Examples: in logico-scientific mode, we have the sentence, tortoise won the race because the hare slept out of overconfidence. Narrator mode, it becomes the hare slept and the tortoise won the race. So in narrator mode, it invites the reader to fill the gaps. If X, then Y. Hare slept and then tortoise won. Logical scientific method, you get the sentence as it happened because of this. It is something like cause effect sequence. There is another example. The king died and then the queen died of sorrow as a result. So that becomes logico-scientific mode, where this queen died because the king died clearly established this cause-effect sequence. And when it comes to narrative mode, it is the king died and then the queen died. Here we understand that this logico scientific sequence is not established, or the cause effect sequence is not at all established in narrative mode, and it is left to the readers to think or imagine about this question whether the queen died as a result of the king's death. And here we come to the key features of narrative mode of thinking. First one, narrative thinking does not seek to establish truths. Instead, it seeks possibilities and similarities. There is nothing like narrative thinking doesn't go in search for that truth or doesn't try to establish the truth. It understands that there are multiple possibilities, multiple similarities, and multiple meanings attached, where the reader can do all these things. And next, it does not work only with reason and rationality, but works with associations. It can use reason and rationality, but it can also work with associations. It can associate with different contexts, different experiences, and bring out meanings, multiple meanings. Third one, it deals with particular conditions and experiences. There is nothing like universal truth. For narrative thinking, there is no sentence. They say that there is no sentence or expression which can claim that this is the universal truth. The truth value of a statement is dependent upon the context in which it is spoken. The truth value depends upon the context. There is nothing like universal truth. And fourth one, logico-scientific does not tolerate contradictions, while the narrative mode accepts contradictions. Logico-scientific method or mode accept that cause-effect sequence. If X happens, this is the result. No contradiction is allowed there. But in narrative mode, it accepts contradictions. It is left with the reader to interpret or attach meaning, and it can bring out contradictory meanings as well. And finally, narrative thinking is rooted in a context, as said earlier, and meaning is generated out of that context of communication and representation. It depends upon that context. So, for this idea that there is no sentence or expression which can which can claim that this is the universal truth, this text gives out an example. It talks about a particular situation. So this is a classroom. Think of a classroom. It is a literature class, and teacher asks this question like, Can anyone tell me what Dorothy Wordsworth, that is William Wordsworth's sister, says about her brother in her letters? So that is a question asked by the teacher to a set of students. Can anyone tell me about what Dorothy Wordsworth tells about her brother in her letters? And if suppose a student answer like this, that I was told by my parents not to read others' letters. So here we have what is known as universal truth. That is, you are not supposed to read others' letters. So that is a universal truth. That is something like a universal norm of behavior. But you know that it is completely or it is completely misfit in this context where these letters must be read for a kind of a critical appreciation of these poems. So it says that there is nothing like universal truth, it is dependent upon the context. The meanings, truths are generated out of context, it is context specific. And we have another examples too. All these narrative thinking is also a practice what we adopt in real life too. We often do that when we examine all those events of the past. When we look at all those events of our past, നമ്മുടെ ജീവിതത്തിൽ പണ്ട് നടന്ന കാര്യങ്ങൾ പഴയ സംഭവങ്ങൾ നമ്മൾ ആലോചിക്കുമ്പോൾ we use this narrative thinking. എങ്ങനെയാണെന്ന് നോക്കാം. We try to impose an order in them. We try to dictate patterns within this chain of events. We always try to impose something like cause, effect, or sequential logic onto them because we can't survive without a pattern. എല്ലാത്തിലും നമ്മളൊരു പാറ്റേൺ കാണാൻ ശ്രമിക്കും. എല്ലാത്തിലും. ഫോർ എക്സാമ്പിൾ നമ്മൾ നടന്നു പോകുമ്പോൾ തലയൊന്ന് അവിടെ ഇടിച്ചു എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ നമ്മൾ അപ്പം ആയിരിക്കും നമ്മൾ ആലോചിച്ച കാര്യം ശരിയല്ല, ആലോചിച്ച കാര്യം ശരിയല്ലാത്തതുകൊണ്ട് ദൈവം ശിക്ഷിച്ചാണ്. വി ഡു ദാറ്റ്, വി ടെൽ ദീസ് തിങ്സ്, these kind of stupid things maybe to our children too. We attribute these patterns, these ordering to our events of our past. നമ്മുടെ ജീവിതത്തിലെ എല്ലാ കാര്യങ്ങൾക്കും നമ്മൾ അങ്ങനെ ഒരു പാറ്റേൺ കാണാൻ ശ്രമിക്കും. So through these narrative thinking we are trying to generate a pattern which is imposed on our past, and here we seek a logic through which all these random events can be linked. For example, ഇപ്പോൾ തലയിടിച്ചു എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് ഒരു റാൻഡം ഇവന്റ് ആണ്. നമ്മൾ അറിയാണ്ട് നടന്നു പോകുമ്പോൾ തല എവിടെയെങ്കിലും പിടിച്ചു അല്ലെങ്കിൽ കാല് എവിടെയെങ്കിലും പിടിച്ചു. ഇറ്റ് ഈസ് എ റാൻഡം ഇവന്റ്. But we try to attach a logic behind it, a pattern. And it is also a way we attain a sense of self that is complete rather than fragmented, ordered rather than random. നമ്മളുടെ സെൽഫിനെ ക്രിയേറ്റ് ചെയ്യുന്നത് അങ്ങനെ തന്നെയാണ്. പല കാര്യങ്ങൾക്കും ഇങ്ങനെ ലോജിക് കണ്ടുപിടിച്ചാണ് നമ്മളുടെ സെൽഫിനെ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഐഡന്റിറ്റിയെ നമ്മൾ ഓർഡർലി ആയിട്ട് മെയിൻറ്റെയിൻ ചെയ്യുന്നത്. അതർവൈസ് ഇറ്റ് വിൽ ബി എ ഫ്രാഗ്മെന്റഡ് വൺ. ഈ പറയുന്ന നമ്മളുടെ മനസ്സിനെ ഇങ്ങനെ അടുക്കി അടുക്കി വെക്കുന്നത് ഈ പറയുന്ന ലോജിക്കൽ ഓർഡറിലാണ്. അതില്ലെങ്കിൽ വി സേ ദാറ്റ് പേഴ്സൺ ഇസ് എ ക്രേസി പേഴ്സൺ. അങ്ങനെ അടുക്കി വെക്കാത്ത അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ആ ഒരു എഫക്ട്, കോസ് എഫക്ട് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ പാറ്റേൺ മനസ്സിലാവാത്ത ആൾ ഹി ഹാസ് കംപ്ലീറ്റ്ലി ലോസ്റ്റ് എന്ന് പറയും. So this narrative modes of thinking invites the reader to fill in gaps, to detect those patterns, to imagine connections. നമ്മൾ imagine ചെയ്യും അതാണ് ഇതിന്റെ connections എന്ന്. And we develop patterns, we detect patterns we impose an order, and the reader speculate on different facts. For example, the sentence, the earth is spherical, where the sphere is flattened somewhat at one point. So, here in the first one, the set of facts are set out clearly with there is no room for ambiguity. It is very clear. The sentence does not invite any kind of speculation or imagination since everything is given to us. Everything is there, everything is established there. And now look at the second one. The earth is spherical, but not a perfect sphere, rather a cricket ball that has been hit hard for some time and has lost a bit of its shape. So, the second sentence actually employs what is known as narrator mode of thinking. Here, the reader is asked to develop those patterns. The reader is asked to imagine that the earth is in the form of a common object or a cricket ball, and it asks the reader to fuse, to combine this image of this beaten cricket ball with that of the earth for a comparison. So, as I said earlier, it asks the reader to develop patterns, to discover connections, and mainly, most importantly, to imagine. So, here we stop our session on narrative modes of thinking. In the next class, we'll be talking about textuality and reading, where we have a detailed analysis of narrator, text, and reader. Hope it is clear. So we have in Kamala K, we have finished till page number 101. Please go through the PPT. I have added extra points from the other text too. Please prepare your notes. If you have any doubts, please contact me. Thank you, girls. Have a nice day.